Big Joe's big heart. The hum of the engine was a lullaby Joe knew by heart. Asphalt blurred beneath the 18 wheels of his rig, the sun painting the Montana sky in hues of apricot and rose. He gripped the steering wheel, its worn leather a familiar comfort. He glanced at the passenger seat, empty now. Used to be, Mary Lou would be there, humming along to the country station, a travel mug of lukewarm coffee in her hand. He could almost smell her perfume, a sweet mix of honeysuckle and hope. Lord, he missed her something awful. He flipped open his phone, speed dialing home. It rang 3 times before a small, breathless voice answered. Daddy. Hey, sweet pea. How you feeling? Okay, Lily said, but Joe heard the hesitation. Grandma made me soup. And I read another chapter of my book. That's my girl. You being good for Grandma. A giggle, light as a feather. Always, Daddy. Joe's heart squeezed. Lily, his brave, bright Lily. Her illness had stolen the color from her cheeks and the spring from her step, but not the sparkle from her eyes. He'd give anything to take it away, to see her running and laughing like other kids. Listen, Pumpkin, I should be home tomorrow afternoon. Anything you want me to bring you? There was a pause. Could you bring me a sunflower? A really big one. A sunflower. Simple, pure, like Lily herself. You got it, sweetheart. I'll find the biggest, brightest sunflower this side of the Mississippi. He ended the call, a renewed sense of purpose settling over him. He'd scour every roadside stand, every farmer's market between here and home. He'd find a sunflower that would make Lily smile, a sunflower that would chase away the shadows that clung to her room like unwanted guests. He imagined her face, lit up by the golden petals. That image alone was enough to keep him going through the long night ahead. A gleam in the night. The hum of the 18-wheeler was a low, constant drone against the quiet symphony of the night. Big Joe Johnson gripped the steering wheel, his large hands steady even after hours on the road. Headlights of oncoming traffic flashed briefly, illuminating his tired but kind face. He'd promised Lily he'd be home before sunrise, and Joe Johnson was a man of his word. The highway was deserted, a ribbon of dark asphalt unspooling beneath his tires. He adjusted the rearview mirror, catching the familiar glow of the dashboard lights. Loneliness, a familiar companion since Martha's passing, settled in the passenger seat beside him. He switched on the radio, hoping for some lively country music to fill the void, but only static crackled through the speakers. Then he saw it. A faint, almost imperceptible gleam in the distance, reflecting his headlights like a tiny star fallen to earth. He squinted, thinking it was just a reflection off a discarded bottle, but the glint persisted, growing brighter as he approached. Curiosity, a rare spark these days, flickered within him. He slowed the rig, easing it onto the shoulder of the road. Gravel crunched under the massive tires as he brought the truck to a stop. The engine idled, a low rumble that vibrated through the cab. He killed the engine and grabbed his flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness. Now, what's all this about? He murmured to himself, his voice a low baritone that barely carried over the chirping of crickets. He climbed down from the cab, the cool night air a welcome change from the stuffy interior. The beam of his flashlight danced along the roadside, illuminating patches of weeds and scrub brush. He walked towards the spot where he'd seen the light, his boots crunching on the gravel. The gleam was stronger now, almost blinding in the beam of his flashlight. As he got closer, he could make out the shape of something amidst the tangled weeds. It wasn't a bottle. It was something else entirely. Something broken. The broken statue. The glint had been stronger than he thought. Not metal, but ceramic, catching the weak morning sun filtering through the trees. Joe pulled the rig onto the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. He grumbled, his aching back protesting the movement. Just 5 more hours, Joe, he muttered to himself, then that sweet, sweet mattress. He walked towards the shimmer, expecting a discarded hubcap or maybe a carelessly tossed beer can. What he found was worse. A statue, or what was left of one. The Virgin Mary, judging by the faded blue paint clinging to the tattered remains of her robe. Her head was gone, snapped clean off, and one arm lay a few feet away, the fingers broken and chipped. The once pristine white ceramic was stained with mud and streaked with algae. Joe knelt, his knees popping in protest. He ran a calloused finger over the smooth curve of her remaining hand. He wasn't a religious man, not really, but this felt wrong. Abandoned. Disrespected. Like a stray dog left to fend for itself. A car whizzed past, the wind buffeting him. Joe imagined the statue, lying here, slowly being swallowed by the undergrowth, forgotten. He couldn't let that happen. He carefully lifted the torso, surprised by its weight. It was heavier than it looked. He cradled it in his arms, the rough ceramic scratching against his skin. The broken arm he tucked under the larger piece, trying to keep it from falling. Back in the cab, he cleared a space on the passenger seat, pushing aside maps and crumpled coffee cups. He laid the statue down gently, cushioning it with his worn-out jacket. It looked absurd, a headless, armless Virgin Mary buckled into a semi-truck. "Don't you worry," Joe said softly, more to himself than the statue. "I'll find you a place." He glanced at the rearview mirror, a strange sense of purpose settling in his chest. Maybe that sweet, sweet mattress could wait just a little longer. A passenger for the night. The interstate hummed a lullaby, but Joe wasn't sleepy. He gripped the wheel of his rig, the rhythmic thump of the tires against the asphalt a comforting counterpoint to the worries churning in his gut. Beside him, swaddled in a greasy blanket, sat Mary. Or at least, what was left of her. "You okay there, sweetheart?" he mumbled, glancing at the statue's serene, albeit chipped, face in the dim glow of the dashboard. "Long ride, I know. But we're getting close." The miles blurred into a tapestry of taillights and road signs. Joe found himself talking more and more to the silent passenger. He told her about his day, the usual gripes about dispatch and the idiot in the four-wheeler who almost clipped him. He even told her about his wife, Martha, and how much he missed her cooking. "She makes a mean meatloaf, Mary. Best you ever tasted, even if you can't, taste." He chuckled, the sound hollow in the cavernous cab. "She's a good woman, Martha. A saint, some would say. Though she'd probably smack me upside the head for calling her that." As the hours crawled by, the conversation deepened. He confessed his fears about the future, the uncertainty of the trucking business, the nagging ache in his back that wouldn't go away. He spoke of his hope that his grandkids would visit more often. The exit sign for Harmony Creek loomed ahead. Relief washed over him, a wave of exhaustion crashing on the shores of his weary soul. He steered the rig onto the off-ramp, the rumble of the engine a familiar comfort. The house was dark when he pulled into the driveway. He cut the engine, plunging the cab into silence. For a moment, he just sat there, staring at the unlit windows. Then, with a sigh, he climbed out, the cool night air a welcome caress on his face. He carefully lifted the blanket-wrapped statue from the passenger seat, cradling it in his arms like a sleeping child. "Almost home, Mary. Almost home." He carried her to the back porch, the wood creaking softly under his weight. He leaned her gently against the wall, shrouded in shadow. He'd figure out where to put her in the morning. For now, she was safe. Lily's discovery. Joe wrestled the statue through the doorway, the cool plaster a stark contrast to his sweat-soaked shirt. He grunted, setting it gently on the sturdy oak table in the living room. Dust motes danced in the lamplight, swirling around the Virgin Mary's serene, if slightly chipped, face. He straightened, his back protesting with a sharp twinge. "There you go, safe and sound," he murmured, more to himself than the statue. Exhaustion tugged at him, heavier than any load he'd hauled that day. He toed off his boots, the familiar thud a small comfort in the quiet house, and shuffled off to bed, leaving the statue bathed in the soft glow. The first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, painting stripes across the worn carpet. Lily stirred, her small frame struggling against the weight of the blankets. Her illness always made mornings a battle. She pushed herself up, the familiar ache settling in her bones. As she shuffled towards the kitchen for her morning tea, something caught her eye. She stopped dead, her breath catching in her throat. The statue. Bathed in the pale morning light, it seemed almost ethereal. Lily's eyes widened, and she moved closer, drawn in by an unseen force. She reached out a tentative finger, tracing the smooth curve of the Virgin's cheek. "Daddy," she called out, her voice raspy from sleep. Joe appeared in the doorway, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "Morning, sweet pea," he mumbled, then noticed where she was looking. "Oh, that Found her on the side of the road yesterday. Lily's gaze was fixed on the statue's missing hand, the jagged edge a stark reminder of its brokenness. "Daddy, what happened?" she asked, her voice filled with a quiet sorrow. She already felt connected to it, seeing in its brokenness a reflection of her own struggles. Joe shrugged, trying to downplay the statue's significance. "Don't know, honey. Just found it like that. Probably fell off a truck or something." Lily's brow furrowed. She reached out and gently touched the raw edge where the hand had been. "But, it's sad, Daddy. Shouldn't we try to fix it?" An innocent kiss. Joe slumped onto the edge of Lily's bed, the springs groaning in protest. The scent of lavender and sickness hung heavy in the air. He scrubbed a hand over his weary face. "Long haul, kiddo. Real long. Found her just outside of Amarillo. Windy stretch of road, nothing but tumbleweeds and the ghosts of old diners." Lily's eyes, usually bright, were dulled by fatigue, but they shone with curiosity. "Her." He nodded towards the statue on the dresser, its plaster surface catching the weak afternoon light. Someone had chucked her. Right in the ditch. Face down in the dirt. Cracked, chipped, the whole 9 yards. He paused, remembering the sight. Couldn't just leave her there, Lily bug. Couldn't do it. So I buckled her into the passenger seat. Figured she'd be safer with me. Lily reached out a frail hand, her fingers tracing the statue's cracked cheek. "Someone threw her away," she whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. Joe sighed. "People do all sorts of things, darlin'. Don't make 'em right." A long silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. Lily's gaze remained fixed on the statue, a strange intensity in her eyes. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them, resolve hardening her expression. "She must have been so lonely," Lily murmured, rising slightly. She leaned forward, her breath ghosting over the cool plaster. Then, with a gentle reverence that made Joe's throat tighten, she pressed a soft kiss against the Virgin Mary's cheek. "Welcome home," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're safe now." Joe watched, a lump forming in his throat. He suddenly felt a pang of hope, a flicker of something warm amidst the sterile chill of the sickroom. He'd brought the statue home to protect it. Maybe, just maybe, it could protect them too. The sweet smell of miracles. Joe woke with a start. It wasn't the jarring rumble of an 18-wheeler or the insistent beeping of his alarm that roused him. It was a smell. A cloying, sweet fragrance, like honeysuckle and spun sugar, filled the air. He wrinkled his nose, momentarily disoriented. Had Lily somehow managed to sneak a batch of cookies into the oven before he'd even opened his eyes? He pushed himself up, the familiar ache in his lower back a dull counterpoint to the unusual sweetness that permeated everything. He padded towards the living room, drawn by the scent. "Lily," he called out, his voice still thick with sleep. The living room was bathed in the soft, pre-dawn light filtering through the curtains. The statue of the Virgin Mary stood on the table, bathed in an almost ethereal glow. But it wasn't the light that stopped Joe in his tracks. It was her hand. The chipped, broken fingers, the jagged edges he'd carefully pieced together, were gone. The hand was whole, smooth, and perfect, as if it had never been damaged at all. The sweet smell seemed to emanate directly from it. Then he saw Lily. She was sitting on the floor near the statue, drawing in her coloring book, her cheeks flushed with color. She looked vibrant. Healthy. Not the pale, listless girl who had been confined to the sofa for weeks. "Daddy," she exclaimed, looking up with a bright smile. "Look." She held up her drawing, a vibrant depiction of a field of flowers, rendered in bold strokes of crayon. "I feel better. I don't feel sick anymore." Joe knelt beside her, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached out, his hand hovering over her forehead, and then touched it. Cool. Not feverish. He pulled her into a hug, burying his face in her hair. The sweet scent clung to her, stronger now, a tangible manifestation of something. He didn't know what, but he knew it was good. "Lily," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Are you sure you feel okay?" "Yes, Daddy. I feel great. Can we go to the park today?" News travels fast. The astonishing news spread with digital speed, far outstripping Joe's long-haul rig. By mid-morning, a cluster of neighbors had formed at the Johnsons' property line, their hushed tones and pointed fingers directed at the house. By noon, the cluster had blossomed into a full-blown spectacle, a human tapestry woven with curiosity and wonder. Cars choked the road, their polished surfaces reflecting the sun's harsh glare. Mabel Higgins, never one to mince words, held court by the mailbox, declaring, always knew Lily had a touch of the divine about her. A bona fide angel, I say. Across the lawn, Mr. Peterson, usually a man of few utterances, was gesticulating wildly, recounting to anyone in earshot the otherworldly glow he'd witnessed emanating from the Johnson residence the previous night. Inside, Lily remained on the couch, clutching her threadbare bear. The incessant rapping had ceased momentarily, yet the murmuring throng outside pulsed like a living thing. Joe patrolled the cramped living space, worry lines creasing his forehead. Sleep had eluded him for days, and his face bore the deep marks of weariness. He peered through a gap in the drapes. It's a regular three-ring out there, Lily Bug. He massaged his aching neck, the rough texture of his skin a familiar comfort. I'm at a loss. Lily squeezed his hand, her small grip surprisingly firm. Maybe they just need to believe, Daddy. Maybe they're hungry for a little hope. Her eyes, typically veiled with exhaustion, now shimmered with an inner radiance. A sharp knock echoed, cutting through the relative quiet. Joe exhaled, a sound laced with defeat. He opened the door to find Mrs. Gable, the pastor's wife, perched on the porch, her cheeks flushed with fervor. Behind her, the crowd surged forward, a wave of expectant faces pressing close. Mr. Johnson, she breathed, her voice trembling slightly. We've heard about the miracle. We simply wish to offer our prayers and, well, witness it ourselves. Joe glanced at Lily, who offered him a gentle, reassuring nod. He drew a deep breath, the sweet scent of honeysuckle and freshly mown grass filling his lungs. All right, he conceded, his voice raspy with fatigue. Come in, then. But please, show some respect. This is still our home. A garden of hope. Sweat slicked Joe's back as he wrestled the stubborn lumber. Carpentry wasn't his forte, but devotion fueled his efforts. The statue, nestled amidst Lily's prized roses, deserved more than its current patch of lawn. He imagined a humble sanctuary, a pocket of peace. Hammer blows punctuated the air as he worked, guided by a mental blueprint, Lily's soft humming from her room a comforting refrain. 2 days saw its completion, a simple wooden structure crowned with time-worn shingles salvaged from the shed. Lily, with a frail yet spirited, it's heaven-colored, Daddy, chose the gentle cerulean paint. Inside, he arranged the statue amidst potted lilies and flickering candles. The following dawn brought the first pilgrim, an elderly woman, rosary clutched in hand, tears tracing paths down her weathered face. She knelt, her whispered prayers mingling with the morning air. Soon, others arrived, a young couple seeking solace for their child's illness, a farmer pleading for rain, a trucker imploring safe passage. Joe's garden blossomed into a refuge, a place of quiet aspiration. Lily, watching from her window, seemed to flourish alongside the roses. Her smile gained luminosity, her eyes a newfound spark. A delicate wave was her silent benediction to the visitors. As twilight painted the sky in fiery hues, Joe sat at Lily's bedside. They come for her, Lily Bug, he murmured, nodding towards the garden. Because of the statue. Her small hand tightened around his. No, Daddy. They come because of you. You brought her here. You created this garden of hope. Joe gazed at his daughter, her fragile beauty, the unwavering belief shining in her eyes. He recalled the damaged statue, abandoned and forgotten. And his own weary heart, yearning for something tangible to believe in. Then he understood. It wasn't solely the statue, it was the kindness, the empathy, the willingness to provide sanctuary for something broken. Perhaps, he mused, that was the genesis of miracles.